Imagine a colossal mountain of pristine ice, hidden in the absolute dark since the very dawn of creation, suddenly nudged out of its eternal slumber. It begins a silent, millions of years long plunge toward a raging inferno, driven by a faint gravitational whisper that will eventually transform it into a magnificent sky-spanning river of light. This epic pilgrimage is not a fantasy, but a physical reality unfolding right now, high above the quiet sanctuary of your resting body. Picture the ancient velvet night sky as early humanity once saw it, suddenly pierced by a brilliant, terrifying sword of fire. For millennia, these chaotic, glowing intruders brought paralyzing terror to sprawling empires, frantically interpreted by shamans and kings as divine omens of impending doom. Surprisingly, the actual scientific truth behind these hairy stars is far more breathtaking and tragic than our ancestors ever dared to dream. Deep within this celestial theatre, every brilliant glowing display demands an incredible, irreversible physical sacrifice from the traveller. The grand, silent wandering of these icy voyagers always leads to an inevitable depletion, as they literally evaporate their primordial history into the solar winds just to be seen. If we were to look closer at their radiant tails, we would witness a slow, elegant ghost story where a frozen monolith gracefully surrenders its physical essence to the stars. This cosmic structure is vast and chaotic, but in this room, the air is perfectly calm and still. You are safe. These wonders are yours to inherit as you sleep, safely delivered to you across billions of miles of empty, silent vacuum to rest gently at the edge of your mind. Allow the heavy gravity of your own world to hold you securely, letting the tension drain from your muscles as you prepare to cross the Great Divide. Let the rhythmic, steady rise and fall of your breathing perfectly match the slow, patient and eternal orbits of the oldest objects in the known universe. Far beyond the familiar illuminated orbits of our local planets lies a frontier of unimaginable scale known as the Oort Cloud. Far beyond the familiar illuminated orbits of our local planets lies a frontier of unimaginable scale known as the Oort Cloud. This vast, spherical shell of icy debris completely envelops our solar system, serving as the hidden birthplace where comets are born. Stretching perhaps a full light year into the interstellar void, it is a ghostly spherical realm completely untouched by the sun's warming rays. Within this cosmic envelope, trillions of frozen fragments drift in perpetual unyielding twilight. The sheer, staggering scale of this structure defies human comprehension, existing at the absolute physical edge of the sun's gravitational influence. It forms a definitive, freezing boundary between the bustling inner solar system and the silent, profound emptiness of deep space. Temperatures in this distant, shadowy nursery plummet to near absolute zero, creating an environment where familiar substances behave in entirely alien ways. In this absolute chill, water cannot flow, ripple, or form the delicate, intricate snowflakes we know on Earth. Instead, it exists exclusively as rock-hard ice, possessing the immense structural integrity of the densest terrestrial granite. Even a violent direct collision in this domain produces no fiery sparks, only a silent, explosive shattering of crystalline dust. The icy bodies here are not the dirty snowballs we see gracing our night skies, but frozen, ancient monoliths wrapped in profound shadow. They wait endlessly in the dark, their frozen hearts holding the purest, most undisturbed water in the entire solar system. Change comes to this static, frozen environment with agonizing slowness, often driven by immense forces originating far beyond our own solar system. Slowly, the faint, distant gravitational pull from a passing star nudges these frozen bodies out of their ancient, undisturbed slumber. A wandering rogue star passing safely light years away casts a subtle, invisible net of gravity across the entire expanse of the Oort Cloud. This microscopic, almost imperceptible shift in momentum is all it takes to alter a physical destiny forged billions of years ago. A frozen monolith, entirely undisturbed since the very dawn of the solar system, suddenly finds its delicate orbital balance permanently disrupted. It begins an imperceptible, silent fall inward, embarking on a monumental journey that will span millions of years before it ever reaches the light. The silent, slow drift of icy dust in deep darkness is briefly, invisibly interrupted by this cosmic perturbation. Entire swarms of dormant cometary material may be simultaneously dislodged in a single epoch, sent cascading slowly toward the sun. It is a grand, slow-motion avalanche in the dark, triggered by the mere passing shadow of a stellar giant. Not all of these celestial wanderers hail from the extreme, invisible outer edges of the distant Oort Cloud. Some comets originate much closer to our planetary home, emerging from a thick, donut-shaped region known as the Kuiper Belt, situated just past the orbit of Neptune. This relatively closer nursery is a chaotic, crowded cosmic dance floor composed of dwarf planets, icy rocks, and primordial solar debris. Though still unimaginably frigid by any earthly standards, the Kuiper Belt occasionally catches a faint pale glimmer of distant sunlight. Here, orbital collisions are slightly more frequent, and the intense gravitational bullying of the nearby giant planets plays a constant disruptive role. Neptune in particular acts as a relentless cosmic shepherd, occasionally flinging one of these icy bodies out of its stable ancient orbit. When violently dislodged, these short-period comets embark on a relatively rapid, plunging journey toward the inner solar system. They are the more frequent recognizable visitors to our night skies, their recurring orbits tied closely to the gravitational whims of the gas giants. Yet, despite their proximity, they remain deeply mysterious, cold emissaries from a twilight zone we're only just beginning to map. Deep within these distant, freezing and silent regions, time has effectively stood entirely still since the dawn of creation. The essential building blocks of comets have remained pristinely untouched since the exact epoch when the solar system first formed from a swirling disk of gas and dust. They serve as the ultimate cosmic time capsules, flawlessly preserving the original chemical recipe of our planetary neighbourhood. Unlike the Earth or Mars, which have been melted, completely reshaped, and battered by endless geological forces, these bodies have experienced absolutely no such violent evolution. Their icy matrices hold the exact, precise chemical ratios and isotopic signatures that existed 4.5 billion years ago. To study their composition is to look directly into the deep, formative past of our own biological existence. Within the silent, slow drift of icy dust in deep darkness, the fundamental secrets of planetary genesis are kept perfectly safe from the ravages of time. Every single grain of silicate and every trapped molecule of frozen carbon monoxide is an original, unaltered artifact. They are the pristine leftover scraps from the grand gravitational construction project that built the Sun and all the planets. Beneath the eventual glowing spectacle of its magnificent tail, the true physical heart of a comet is surprisingly humble and deeply complex. A typical comet nucleus is essentially a loose conglomerate, a highly fragile amalgamation made of primordial ice, ancient dust, and dark, complex organic material. It behaves less like a solid, unyielding rock, and much more like a loosely packed, incredibly dirty snowball clinging together by only the weakest of gravitational threads. This highly porous, sponge-like structure is intricately woven together with complex carbon-based molecules, giving the outer surface an extraordinarily dark, almost pitch-black visual appearance. In the deep void, they reflect very little ambient light, effectively masquerading as empty voids in the glowing starfield. The embedded dust is incredibly fine, much finer than typical talcum powder, mixed intimately with ancient frozen water and other exotic ices. If an astronaut were to hold a piece of this nucleus, it would feel shockingly light and be highly prone to crumbling into dust at the slightest physical pressure. It is a masterpiece of delicate cosmic architecture, held together solely in the freezing dark. This fragile, blackened heart patiently awaits the intense, destructive, and transformative heat of the sun to unleash its hidden brilliance. It is remarkably easy to mistakenly assume these objects are completely unremarkable, until they finally ignite into a fiery spectacle across our skies. Yet, even before feeling the absolute slightest warmth of the sun, comets possess a quiet, dormant, and profound beauty in the utter void of deep space. Drifting entirely silently through the interstellar abyss, they act as magnificent monuments of pristine, undisturbed nature, coated in a thick layer of ancient, heavily irradiated cosmic dust. Their shadowy surfaces are a dramatic landscape of stark visual contrasts, featuring towering, jagged spires of rough ice and incredibly deep, shadowy craters that have never seen a single solitary photon of light. The sheer, overwhelming physical isolation of these bodies lends them a profound, almost melancholic astronomical majesty. They are silent, relentless voyagers, completely detached from the chaotic, noisy swirl of the inner planets. Gravity is widely recognized as the master sculptor of the physical universe, but out here, its creative touch is exceptionally light. Because they entirely lack the immense internal mass required to crush themselves into perfect smooth spheres, their shapes are rarely perfectly round. Instead, they are delightfully and wildly asymmetrical, very often resembling lumpy, misshapen potatoes, twisted dumbbells, or heavily bruised bowling pins tumbling wildly through the dark. These bizarre, highly irregular forms are the direct physical result of gentle, incredibly slow-motion collisions that occurred billions of years in the past. Two separate wandering icy bodies might drift together at a mere walking speed, touching softly and fusing permanently to create a strange, two-lobed structural chimera. Over countless eons, the gradual accumulation of microscopic cosmic dust layers softens their most jagged edges, but their fundamental geometric oddity remains completely intact. Without a strong gravitational field to aggressively smooth them out, every single impact crater, raised ridge, and shallow valley becomes a permanent, unerasable fixture of their geography. They tumble endlessly end over end, casting strange, erratic and shifting shadows across their own surfaces if a distant star happens to catch them. This lumpy, totally irregular nature makes absolutely every single comet a totally unique, unrepeatable physical masterpiece of cosmic happenstance. The vast, overwhelming majority of these frozen historical relics will never become the brilliant, iconic heralds of the night sky that we so easily recognize. Billions of these quiet, unassuming wanderers drift endlessly, securely locked in eternal, stable orbits without ever leaving the freezing depths of the outer solar system. They are absolutely destined to circle the sun in perpetual, unbroken darkness, forever denied the visually transformative and destructive experience of direct solar warmth. Their orbital paths are vast, incredibly lazy ellipses that take tens of thousands of Earth years to complete just a single, lonely revolution. They pass each other quietly like invisible ghost ships in the darkest night, heavily separated by millions of miles of empty, unforgiving and silent vacuum. In this profoundly secluded realm, the chemical history of the early solar system remains securely suspended, strictly locked in an endless looping gravitational waltz. The sheer, unimaginable volume of these unseen bodies constitutes a highly significant portion of the solar system's original mass, safely hidden away in the dark. They represent a massive, silent and untapped reservoir of ancient water and organic chemistry, orbiting strictly in total obscurity. Their persistent existence is a humbling testament to the staggering, largely unseen scale of the universe, resting just beyond our local planetary neighborhood. Out of the countless trillions of dormant, icy bodies sleeping soundly in the distant Oort Cloud and Kuiper Belt, very few are actually chosen for a spectacular fate. Only a tiny, mathematically insignificant fraction ever permanently break their ancient orbits to begin the long, perilous journey inward toward the consuming fire of the sun. For those exceptionally rare few, an incredibly subtle gravitational nudge rapidly becomes a permanent one-way ticket to a profound, destructive physical transformation. This rapid descent marks the absolute beginning of the end for the icy wanderer, a glorious, fiery sacrifice that will heavily scatter its ancient material across the inner planets. The silent, slow drift of icy dust in deep darkness inevitably gives way to blinding speed, chaotic sublimation, and dazzling visible light. It is a rare, essentially suicidal pilgrimage that uniquely allows the inner universe to briefly witness the frozen secrets of its own spectacular creation. That spectacular creation begins to unfold in earnest as the frozen pilgrim crosses an invisible, thermal threshold in the dark. Crossing the orbital path of the largest gas giant marks the precise dramatic point where radiant energy finally begins to actively wake the celestial wanderer. Up until this cosmic boundary, the distant heat of our local star has been far too weak to penetrate the deep, insulating chill of the void. Now, however, the sheer intensity of the solar glare reaches a critical tipping point, gently caressing the blackened, dust-covered surface of the ancient monolith. The faint, gentle hiss of ancient ice sublimating into gas starts to whisper across a landscape that has known only absolute silence for countless eons. Thermal energy penetrates the highly porous crust, sending delicate shivers of warmth down into the untouched, pristine interior of the dark nucleus. This subtle awakening is not a sudden, violent explosion, but a slow, gradual dawn breaking over a terrain that has never experienced a true morning. As the invisible wave of warmth washes over the jagged, irregular spires, the very chemistry of the deep past begins to actively respond. It is the definitive beginning of a magnificent, unstoppable metamorphosis, beautifully transforming a dead relic into a living, breathing entity of the inner solar expanse. Deep within the shadowy, irregular crevices of the tumbling body, highly volatile compounds are the very first to feel the touch of the awakening heat. Frozen gases like ancient carbon dioxide and primordial carbon monoxide, trapped in solid matrices since the dawn of time, are incredibly sensitive to this new warmth. They eagerly begin to vaporize, breaking their crystalline bonds and escaping out into the surrounding, unforgiving vacuum of the starry expanse. These particular locked volatiles require far less thermal energy to agitate than solid water, making them the eager pioneers of the grand unfolding display. Their sudden release creates a microscopic, complex network of pressurized pockets deep beneath the blackened, dusty crust of the fragile, sponge-like surface. As pressure steadily builds, these ancient gases seek any available microscopic fissure or weak point to escape their endless confinement in the dark. This gradual outgassing carries away the earliest microscopic fragments of cosmic dust that have been locked away since the chaotic birth of the planets. The escaping molecules carry the distinct chemical signature of the early universe, releasing it like an incredibly slow, deliberate exhalation into the great dark. It is a quiet, profound dismantling of history, happening molecule by molecule as the solar furnace continues to draw the wanderer ever closer. This direct leap from a solid state to a gas is a magnificent, silent phenomenon known as sublimation, occurring continuously across the sunward-facing ridges. There are no rivers, lakes, or even the smallest droplets of moisture forming on the jagged alien terrain to soften its sharp, imposing contours. Instead, the ice simply vanishes from the surface, instantly becoming a diffuse, expanding cloud of energized molecules rushing away from the parent body. As you rest here, feeling the steady, calming rhythm of your own breathing, consider the gentle, continuous exhalation of this ancient ice into the void. The sheer lack of pressure allows the escaping vapor to expand violently and infinitely outward, creating a massive, invisible atmosphere that refuses to be contained. This silent, dry evaporation is the unseen, underlying engine that will eventually power the most magnificent visual spectacles ever witnessed in the night sky. Surrounding the solid, irregular heart of the traveller, this newly liberated gas begins to form a highly expansive, glowing cloud, known to astronomers as a coma. It is a temporary, highly tenuous atmosphere that clings loosely to the weak gravitational field of the tumbling icy nucleus. This expanding halo acts as a brilliant diffuse canvas, catching the harsh, incoming solar radiation and scattering it wildly in every conceivable direction. The coma is not a static, rigidly defined sphere, but a dynamic, pulsing envelope of escaping material that is constantly being replenished from within. As more deep pockets of ancient ice are exposed to the relentless solar glare, the volume of the surrounding cloud swells to truly gargantuan proportions. It entirely obscures the tiny, dark nucleus at its centre, hiding the true, solid source of the magnificent emission from the prying eyes of distant observers. Within this hazy, expanding sphere, complex chemical reactions are immediately triggered by the harsh, unfiltered ultraviolet light violently striking the newly freed molecules. The fragile molecular bonds of the ancient structure are aggressively shattered by radiation, creating highly reactive, glowing fragments that illuminate the surrounding darkness. The faint, gentle hiss of ancient ice sublimating into gas fuels this brilliant glowing camouflage that precedes the wanderer on its chaotic journey. This profound size disparity highlights the incredible, almost magical expansive properties of gas when released into an environment completely devoid of ambient pressure. A tiny, lumpy rock, easily small enough to fit comfortably within the boundaries of a typical earthly city, effectively controls a glowing cloud the size of a world. The sheer emptiness of the surrounding void offers absolutely no resistance, allowing the vapour to travel immense distances outward before being swept away. If we were to look closer at the vibrant glowing heart of this massive cloud, a striking unearthly palette of light often begins to emerge. Frequently, a highly distinct, fiercely beautiful green hue permeates the centre of the coma as complex diatomic carbon molecules violently react to the incoming solar radiation. This particular, highly energetic form of carbon is completely destroyed by sunlight over time, restricting the brilliant emerald glow to the immediate vicinity of the nucleus. The vivid green emission is a stunning, ghostly signature of the organic carbon-rich compounds that have been frozen deep within the ice since the dawn of creation. As the intense ultraviolet light bombards these fragile molecules, they absorb the energy and immediately re-emit it as a bright, hauntingly vibrant wavelength of green light. It gives the expanding cloud an eerie radioactive appearance, a glowing cosmic jewel tumbling relentlessly through the stark black and white contrast of space. As your body sinks deeper into relaxation, drifting smoothly into the calm, quiet rhythm of the moment, allow the image of this glowing green halo to settle in your mind. This specific radiant colour is rarely seen in the cold, distant reaches of the dark, making it a vivid, undeniable beacon of warmth and chemical activity. The spectacular emerald shroud is a beautiful, fleeting consequence of primordial chemistry finally meeting the chaotic, destructive energy of a living star. Hidden safely deep inside this brightly illuminated, expansive green envelope, the core undergoes a surprisingly serene, steady dismantling of its internal structure. The celestial wanderer actively sheds its oldest, outermost crustal layers in a profoundly peaceful, continuous breath that slowly diminishes its overall physical mass. There are no sudden, catastrophic explosions tearing the body apart, but rather a gentle, relentless peeling away of history into the surrounding vacuum. The faint, gentle hiss of ancient ice sublimating into gas carries away microscopic grains of silicates and heavy organics that have shielded the interior for countless ages. As the ancient blackened crust weakens, crumbles and drifts away, entirely fresh, previously untouched layers of pristine ice are slowly exposed to the brilliant solar glare. This continuous quiet exfoliation ensures that the majestic outgassing remains strong and steady, perpetually feeding the vast glowing atmosphere that surrounds it. It is an incredibly elegant slow-motion surrender of physical form to the overwhelming, inescapable power of the inner system's radiant thermal energy. The gradual, peaceful shedding of these ancient layers is an act of cosmic generosity, freely distributing the fundamental ingredients of chemistry into the empty pathways of space. The tumbling mountain of ice accepts its inevitable slow destruction with a quiet, breathtaking grace, dissolving beautifully into the light that called it inward. The physical mechanism driving this spectacular release of material is rarely uniform, often concentrating in highly localized explosive areas of intense, focused activity. Brilliantly illuminated jets of fine dust and energized gas erupt softly from the sunward side of the spinning nucleus, piercing through the darker, shadowed regions of the crust. These isolated geysers are born when deep pockets of highly volatile ice are suddenly exposed to the raw, unfiltered power of direct scorching sunlight. Like massive cosmic exhaust vents, these localized eruptions aggressively channel the sublimating gas outward in tight, focused, and incredibly fast-moving dynamic streams. Escaping vapor drags immense oceans of microscopic dust particles along with it, creating distinct, highly visible rays that shoot outward into the expansive coma. The force of these erupting jets acts like tiny, unpredictable thrusters, subtly pushing and altering the physical rotation and trajectory of the fragile, tumbling body. These brilliant, focused fountains of glowing material provide a stark, dramatic contrast against the pitch-black, jagged and frozen terrain that entirely surrounds them. They are the active, beating heartbeats of the changing wanderer, violently transferring the deeply buried, frozen past into the sprawling, chaotic and brightly lit present. The relentless solar furnace demands a continuous tribute of ice and dust, and the rotating nucleus answers with a magnificent multi-directional display of erupting power. Because the entire irregular body is constantly tumbling and rotating as it flies through the void, these erupting geysers refuse to point in a single static direction. The continuous spinning motion twists the escaping streams of dust and gas, creating mesmerizing, highly complex spiral-shaped halos that slowly expand outward into the coma. These magnificent, curving shockwaves of material stack upon one another, resembling the intricate, overlapping petals of a glowing cosmic flower blooming in the dark. As deep, volatile pockets rotate into the harsh sunlight, they violently turn on, blasting material outward, only to quickly shut off as they rotate back into the freezing night. This rhythmic, cyclical process creates distinct, perfectly spaced shells of expanding gas that ripple outward from the center, like water disturbed by a heavy stone. The resulting geometric patterns are breathtakingly complex, visually tracing the exact rotational speed and axial tilt of the hidden, tumbling mountain at the core. As your muscles loosen, and the physical tension fully leaves your limbs, let your imagination trace the slow, hypnotic spirals of this expanding icy breath. The magnificent sweeping curves of dust are a beautiful temporary record of a chaotic dance, painted on a canvas of absolute, unforgiving stellar vacuum. It is a stunning display of fluid dynamics occurring in an environment with no liquid fluid, driven entirely by the endless rotational waltz of a dying rock. Ultimately, the sprawling, brilliant majesty of this entire celestial phenomenon relies entirely on a profound, incredibly beautiful trick of scattered, bouncing light. The fierce, unfiltered sunlight violently reflects off the vast oceans of suspended microscopic dust, giving the comet its signature, iconic, ghostly glow against the distant stars. Without this immense floating cloud of liberated debris acting as an expansive mirror, the massive expanding gas would remain almost completely invisible to the human eye. Every individual speck of ancient silicate dust acts as a tiny solitary beacon, catching the photons from our local star and bouncing them across the inner system. The cumulative effect of these countless microscopic reflections is the creation of a brilliantly luminous, hazy apparition that effortlessly commands the dark, empty sky. It is an extraordinary optical illusion, a grand, sweeping shadow play that heavily relies on the delicate interaction between ancient dirt and raw stellar energy. The faint, gentle hiss of ancient ice sublimating into gas creates the very atmosphere needed to hold this scattered, reflective dust in delicate, floating suspension. The resulting ghostly glow is the ultimate visual triumph of the awakening warmth, transforming a dark, dead relic into an unforgettable, shining beacon of cosmic history. This brilliant, luminous cloud now races forward, fully prepared to be violently sculpted by the harsh, unseen winds that fiercely guard the inner sanctum of the star. That fierce guard of the inner sanctum operates not with solid walls, but through an overwhelming, invisible gale of charged particles pouring continuously from the stellar surface. As the glowing apparition races ever closer to this radiant inferno, the expanding spherical halo of gas meets an unstoppable, outward-flowing cosmic hurricane. The solar wind, a relentless tempest of protons and electrons, collides violently with the fragile, tenuous atmosphere of the plunging wanderer. Instead of instantly tearing the entire structure apart, this unseen torrent acts as a masterful, dynamic sculptor working on a scale of unimaginable grandeur. It physically pushes against the expelled material, overcoming the weak gravitational hold of the tumbling icy heart and dragging the glowing vapour backward. The sweeping veil-like brush of silver dust against the blackness of space begins to take shape as the spherical cloud stretches into an elongated, magnificent form. What was once a simple, hazy bubble is violently stretched into spectacular flowing ribbons that trail behind the charging celestial body. The raw magnetic power of the star dictates the exact flow of this expelled material, shaping it into a glorious aerodynamic banner. This grand transformation from a formless haze to a highly structured streaming tail heralds the true arrival of the cosmic visitor into the warm, illuminated planetary realm. Among the cascading debris, heavier silicate particles behave quite differently than the lighter, highly energized vapor when struck by the intense stellar pressure. These macroscopic grains of primordial dirt are gently pushed away from the glowing core, drifting slowly and steadily along the exact orbital path the body is tracing. Because they possess a significant physical mass, they retain their own distinct momentum, lagging slightly behind the main nucleus as it accelerates through the curving trajectory. This sluggish, lingering movement creates a beautifully arched, sweeping arc of material that paints a broad stroke across the starry canvas. Reflected sunlight catches these floating grains perfectly, painting the entire sprawling ribbon in a warm, yellowish-white hue that stands out vividly against the absolute dark. The sweeping, veil-like brush of silver dust against the blackness of space curves gracefully, tracing a temporary glowing map of the wanderer's exact historical path. Distant observers are treated to a magnificent, fan-shaped spray of debris that grows wider and more diffuse the further it drifts from the source. It is an enduring visual memory of the journey itself, a physical trail of breadcrumbs left behind in the chaotic plunge toward the solar furnace. This beautiful arcing dust stream is often the most prominent and easily recognizable feature of the brilliant night sky display. Completely distinct from that heavy, curving stream of dirt, a secondary, entirely separate phenomenon materializes under the profound influence of stellar magnetic fields. The highly volatile gases, stripped of their electrons by intense ultraviolet radiation, transform rapidly into an energized plasma that behaves exactly like a fluid electric current. This ionized material is entirely indifferent to the physical momentum of the orbit, surrendering completely to the overwhelming magnetic dominance of the solar wind. As you rest peacefully, feeling the slow, rhythmic expansion of your chest with every breath. Visualize these distinct twin streams flowing from a singular, chaotic source. One bends gently with the heavy weight of physical memory, while the other is pulled taut and straight by raw electrical power. Together, they create a breathtaking dual-pronged crown of light that beautifully illustrates the complex unseen forces dominating the local astronomical neighbourhood. The physical dimensions of these glowing streams defy all standard terrestrial concepts of size, stretching into unfathomable distances that simply boggle the mortal mind. From the tiny, tumbling icy mountain at their source, these massive banners of light can easily unfurl across a significant fraction of the entire inner planetary expanse. A singular flowing ribbon can seamlessly connect the orbital pathway of a rocky world to the distant empty trajectory of its planetary neighbour. To fly along the full length of such a magnificent structure would require a staggering journey through a truly vast expanse of seemingly empty vacuum. Despite originating from an object barely the size of a small island, the resulting luminous display bridges the yawning chasms between the planets with effortless grace. The sweeping veil-like brush of silver dust against the blackness of space becomes a cosmic highway of light, entirely dwarfing the fragile body that birthed it. This incredible stretching of matter highlights the extreme, almost incomprehensible thinness of the environment in which the grand spectacle occurs. Only in the absolute frictionless silence of the stellar void can a simple exhalation of vapour and dirt expand to rival the scale of the planetary orbits themselves. It is a breathtaking demonstration of how profoundly a tiny ancient rock can visually command the sheer, unimaginable immensity of the surrounding cosmos. Surprisingly, human intuition regarding movement and wind resistance is completely overturned when observing the orientation of these colossal, flowing structures. On our warm, atmospheric world, a trailing banner always flares directly behind a moving object, indicating the precise direction of its forward travel. In the vacuum of the inner system, however, the overwhelming pressure of the stellar outgassing dictates that the glowing appendages always point directly away from the radiant centre. This creates a wonderfully counterintuitive reality during the latter portion of the grand, plunging pilgrimage through the warm, illuminated zone. After making its closest, most perilous approach to the stellar surface, the surviving icy body begins its long, desperate retreat back into the freezing darkness. Because the relentless solar gale continues to push outward, the magnificent dual-pronged display now precedes the retreating nucleus, like a massive glowing searchlight sweeping ahead. The celestial traveller literally follows its own magnificent wake as it flees the blistering heat, flying blindly into the expansive, luminous clouds it just expelled. It is a deeply strange, backwards flight that completely defies our familiar earthly expectations of motion and aerodynamic drag. This backward-facing procession is a profound reminder that the rules governing the silent void are dictated entirely by the overwhelming authority of the local star. Despite projecting an illusion of immense glowing solidity, the actual density of this sweeping ribbon is almost incomprehensibly sparse and hollow. The beautiful curving fan of material is so unbelievably thin that it is closer to a perfect vacuum than any artificial environment ever created in a terrestrial laboratory. It is merely a delicate floating phantom, a sparse collection of microscopic grains heavily separated by vast stretches of total, unbroken emptiness. Because of this profound, inherent emptiness, the sweeping, veil-like brush of silver dust against the blackness of space behaves like a perfectly transparent gossamer curtain. When viewed from a great distance, the bright, piercing pinpricks of background stars can easily be seen shining completely unhindered straight through the thickest portion of the display. The glowing dust does not block or swallow the distant starlight, but rather frames it beautifully, adding a soft, hazy filter to the eternal cosmic background. As the deep, heavy relaxation settles further into your muscles, softening your shoulders and easing your jaw, Imagine looking through this luminous, ghostly veil. You're peering straight through an immense river of ancient dirt, yet the ancient constellations remain perfectly visible and crisp behind the scattered debris. It is a stunning visual paradox, a structure massive enough to span planetary orbits, yet fragile enough to let the weakest starlight pass entirely undisturbed. Occasionally, the complex spatial geometry of the solar system aligns in a perfectly orchestrated, incredibly rare visual coincidence. As our own blue world travels along its designated circular path, we sometimes pass directly through the exact flat orbital plane left behind by the plunging celestial wanderer. This unique, precise vantage point flattens our perspective of the sprawling debris field, compressing vast stretches of scattered dust into a singular, highly concentrated line of sight. When this perfect geometric alignment occurs, the heavier, lagging particles of dirt appear to jut outward in the entirely wrong direction, seemingly pointing straight toward the blistering sun. This magnificent, fleeting anomaly creates a brilliant spike of light that thoroughly confuses the casual, uninitiated observer looking up from the surface. It completely shatters the established rule of the solar wind, offering a sharp, bright dagger of debris that seemingly defies the outward flowing tempest. Yet this rebellious, sunward-pointing spike is nothing more than a magnificent, large-scale optical illusion born entirely from our specific, momentary viewing angle. We are simply looking edge-on at a wide, curved sheet of drifting gravel, visually stacking the scattered particles until they mimic a solid, impossible structure. It is a beautiful, temporary trick of perspective, a secret geometric alignment shared briefly between the wandering ice, the local star, and our own rolling home. This glorious, sky-spanning exhibition of glowing gas and shining dirt extracts a terribly heavy, irreversible physical toll upon the ancient tumbling body. Every passing moment spent bathing in the harsh, radiant warmth of the inner system accelerates the violent, continuous dismantling of the fragile, deeply frozen architecture. The sheer volume of material sublimating into the void reaches staggering, almost catastrophic proportions as the body plunges toward its closest stellar approach. Unfathomable quantities of primordial ice and dark organic gravel are continuously stripped away from the core and lost permanently to the surrounding vacuum. An entire landscape of deep craters, raised ridges, and jagged spires dissolves completely into the ether over the course of just a few brutally hot rotational periods. The sweeping, veil-like brush of silver dust against the blackness of space is quite literally the physical flesh of the traveller scattered carelessly across the heavens. This massive, relentless shedding means the celestial body is actively dying in order to produce its legendary, brilliant performance for the cosmos. It is a glorious, self-destructive sacrifice, trading its ancient, frozen immortality for a brief, spectacular period of intense, luminous activity. With every single orbit, the tumbling mountain shrinks, surrendering another massive fraction of its original untouched mass to the greedy, invisible winds of the local star. The most profound, deeply hidden secret of this entire sky-dominating phenomenon lies in the shocking reality of its actual physical weight. Despite shedding such immense quantities of material, the overall mass of the expelled dust and gas is incredibly small when compared to the gargantuan glowing volume it occupies. The majestic, sprawling tail stretching across the planetary orbits is essentially a magnificent, luminous mirage built on an impossibly sparse foundation of actual substance. If one could magically gather every single floating grain of dust and every glowing molecule of plasma from that immensely long ribbon, the resulting pile would be surprisingly insignificant. The entire sweeping spectacle contains significantly less solid matter than a very ordinary, entirely unremarkable terrestrial mountain, resting quietly on the surface of our homeworld. It is a staggering revelation that so little actual substance can be stretched so perfectly to visually dominate the expansive dark theatre of the night sky. Let this profound sense of delicate lightness wash over you, feeling the comfortable grounding weight of your own body resting securely against the solid earth below. You're anchored firmly to reality, while the brilliant cosmic display above is merely a wispy, insubstantial ghost playing a magnificent trick with scattered starlight. The sheer efficiency of the universe to create such overwhelming, majestic beauty from almost completely nothing is a humbling, extraordinary truth. Ultimately, the entire breathtaking exhibition is nothing more than a strictly temporary, highly localized reaction to the overwhelming presence of the stellar furnace. The glowing plasma, the sweeping dust, and the expansive emerald-tinted halo cannot exist independently in the cold, silent depths of the broader galaxy. They are entirely dependent on the violent, continuous input of raw solar energy to maintain their luminous, expansive, and dynamic structures. As the heavily battered, newly shrunken core finally retreats back out toward the freezing, distant twilight, the brilliant display quickly begins to fade and falter. The harsh, driving winds subside, the intense radiation softens, and the sweeping veil-like brush of silver dust against the blackness of space gradually dissipates into the void. The magnificent tails lose their rigid structure, breaking apart and blending seamlessly into the vast unseen background of general interplanetary debris. The grand, sky-spanning ribbons of light are ultimately revealed to be a fleeting shadow, a brief, luminous echo cast entirely by the sun's overwhelming influence. The ancient icy wanderer returns to its dark, dormant state, completely stripping away its glorious costume as it slinks back into the freezing abyss. What remains is a quiet, altered rock, carrying the silent memory of its spectacular temporary burn through the bright, chaotic heart of our planetary neighbourhood. Deep within the silent memory of that planetary neighbourhood, a profound chemical record remains etched into the frozen architecture of these wandering monoliths. Locked securely inside the ancient ice are pristine isotopic signatures and molecular arrangements that have been preserved for exactly 4.5 billion years. These artifacts represent the very first moments of the solar system's birth, a time when the sun was a young star surrounded by a swirling disk of primordial gas and dust. This structure acts as a perfect cryogenic vault, protecting these delicate chemical fragments from the high-energy radiation and geological churning that erase similar records on every planet in our system. Every single grain of dust and every molecule of water within the nucleus is an original witness to the grand gravitational assembly of our local cosmic home. To touch this material is to bridge the incomprehensible gap of time, reaching back to the literal dawn of our physical reality in the universe. The silence of the outer system ensured that no chemical reactions or structural changes could occur for billions of eons, keeping the past perfectly intact. These bodies are the ultimate biological and chemical ancestors, carrying the unedited story of where every atom in our bodies originally came from. We are standing before the only remaining relics that have not been modified, melted or reshaped by the violent history of the inner system, offering a pure window into our genesis. Surprisingly, the universe is not a sterile expanse of rock and ice, but a vibrant nursery of complex carbon chemistry, waiting to be discovered by those who look closely. Scientists have detected sophisticated organic molecules, including fundamental amino acids like glycine, drifting freely within the glowing green-tinted comas of these visiting giants. These molecules are the essential building blocks required to construct proteins, the very machinery and structural foundation of all known life on our blue world. Finding these precursors in such a hostile, freezing environment suggests that the seeds of biology were already present long before the planets themselves were fully formed into solid worlds. The vast expanding clouds of gas are not just exhaust, but a rich soup of prebiotic ingredients being actively released into the planetary neighbourhood for the first time in eons. This discovery fundamentally alters our understanding of how common the ingredients for life might be across the wider, dark expanse of the galaxy. Each mission that passes through these glowing halos returns with evidence of a chemical complexity that rivals the richest soils on Earth. The presence of these organics indicates that the early solar nebula was a place of unexpected molecular creativity and sophisticated chemical synthesis. We are witnessing the slow, majestic dispersal of a life-bearing legacy that has been waiting patiently in the dark for billions of years to be shared. These simple building blocks of life were preserved perfectly in the deep freeze of the outer system, shielded forever from the destructive power of heat and light. In the profound chill of the Oort Cloud and Kuiper Belt, the delicate molecular bonds of these organic messengers remained completely stable and unchanged throughout cosmic time. This planetary deep freeze acted as a natural sanctuary, allowing fragile chemistry to survive the turbulent eras that defined the early growth of our local star. Notice how the stillness of your own body right now mirrors the ancient frozen stability of these distant chemical messengers waiting in the dark. As you breathe slowly and feel the weight of your limbs, consider that the same molecules allowing your heart to beat were once locked in a similar icy silence. The cosmic cold is not an enemy of life, but its most faithful guardian, keeping the fundamental blueprints of existence safe until the time was right. If we were to look closer at the interior of these icy mountains, we would find a complex lattice of water ice trapping these molecules in a secure embrace. This preservation ensures that even as the comet eventually begins its final, sunward plunge, it carries a cargo of prehistoric chemistry that is completely untainted by time. It is a spectacular act of cosmic curation, holding on to the potential for life until a habitable world is finally ready to receive the gift. Many researchers suspect that the early history of our world was shaped by a violent, life-giving rain of icy bodies from the outer edges of space. Early comet impacts likely delivered vast amounts of water to a young, dry Earth during a period of intense bombardment billions of years ago. Our planet was born as a scorched, molten rock, but these wandering ice mountains may have acted as celestial tankers, filling the empty basins of our world. The sheer volume of water required to create our modern seas is staggering, and comets represent one of the most significant reservoirs of this liquid gold. Every time one of these icy monoliths collided with the cooling crust of the early Earth, it released its frozen heart into the atmosphere and across the surface. This continuous, multi-million-year deluge transformed a dead, rocky world into a blue oasis capable of supporting a vast and thriving biosphere that we call home. This theory suggests that our deep connection to the stars is literal, as the water flowing through our veins may have originated in the freezing darkness. We are the beneficiaries of a cosmic delivery system that spanned the entire length of the solar system to bring us the most precious resource of all. The oceans we sail today are perhaps nothing more than the melted remains of 1 trillion ancient visiting comets that once graced our skies. This connection becomes even more profound when we examine the specific chemical fingerprints hidden within the water molecules themselves as they evaporate into the light. The water in some comets perfectly matches the chemical signature of Earth's modern oceans, specifically when looking at the rare ratio of deuterium to hydrogen atoms. This isotopic match acts as a definitive forensic link, connecting the vast waves of our Atlantic and Pacific Oceans to the icy debris of the system. If we were to trace the journey of a single drop of seawater back through time, we might find its origin in a distant cloud. This shared chemical identity suggests that the water on our world was not made here, but was gathered from the same primordial source that built comets. It is a stunning realization that the simple act of drinking a glass of water connects us directly to the ancient chemistry of the deep, silent void. As you feel the cool air entering your lungs, think about the immense cycle of water that spans from the edge of the sun's influence. This structure of isotopic evidence provides a bridge across the billions of miles that separate our world from the nurseries of the cold Oort Cloud. The signature of the heavens is written into every tide and every rainstorm that graces our planetary surface, connecting the sea to the stars. Phosphorus, a crucial and rare element for human DNA and cellular energy, has recently been found in the fine dust of Comet 67P by the Rosetta mission. This discovery completes the list of essential chemical elements required for life, all found within a single, ancient cometary body drifting through the cold. It suggests that these wandering mountains were not just providing water, but the entire complex toolkit needed to jump-start the machinery of biological evolution on Earth. Without the presence of phosphorus, the genetic code that defines every living thing on our planet could never have been constructed or sustained over generations. Finding this specific element in the dust of a distant wanderer indicates that the fundamental ingredients for our existence were distributed throughout the early nebula. It reinforces the idea that life on Earth is not an isolated accident, but a result of a widespread chemistry active long before we arrived. Notice the gentle pulse in your fingertips, a quiet reminder of the biological energy powered by the same phosphorus found in the deep freeze of space. We're made of the very same materials that drift through the dark, icy reaches of the outer solar system, waiting for their moment. This ancient messenger has revealed that the blueprint for our own physical being was already being written in the stars during the dawn of time. The actual scent of a comet would be a shocking and highly complex sensory experience, far removed from the sterile void we often imagine in silence. Based on the chemical analysis of the molecules released into the coma, a comet would resemble a strange mixture of bitter almonds, sulfur, and sweet rum. The sharp metallic scent of space dust mixed with sweet organic molecules creates a unique olfactory signature that is both repulsive and strangely alluring. The scent of bitter almonds comes from the presence of hydrogen cyanide, a deadly but essential precursor to the formation of life's more complex biological chemistry. This is layered with the heavy, sulphurous stench of hydrogen sulfide and the sweet, alcohol-like notes of methanol and other fermented organic compounds. This cosmic perfume is the literal smell of creation itself, a potent chemical brew that has been aging in the cold for billions of years. Imagine standing on the surface of such a body as it awakens, the airless void filling with this thick, invisible, and incredibly ancient chemical vapor. It is a sharp, distinct reminder that the universe is made of tangible, physical substances that react and transform in predictable, beautiful ways. This complex scent is the chemical language of the stars, speaking of the long and winding road that led from gas to human senses. Gathering these precious samples from such a fast-moving and unpredictable target requires modern spacecraft to perform delicate, high-stakes ballets in the middle of the void. To capture the elusive dust grains without destroying them, engineers use specialized collectors lined with aerogel, an incredibly light substance often described as frozen smoke. As the spacecraft flies through the thick of the coma, these microscopic grains are gently slowed down and caught within the airy, blue matrix. This process allows us to bring a piece of the ancient outer solar system back to our laboratories for a level of detailed analysis. Every grain captured in the aerogel represents a tiny, pristine piece of history that has travelled billions of miles to meet our growing technology. The precision required to intercept a comet travelling at tens of thousands of miles per hour is a testament to our mastery over the environment. These missions provide us with a direct physical connection to the era of the planet's birth, allowing us to see the original blocks with eyes. We're no longer limited to observing from a distance. We're actively reaching out and touching the fabric of our own primordial origins. This delicate capture of cosmic dust is the ultimate forensic investigation into the mystery of how life and the planets came to be. Every passing comet scatters these ancient seeds of chemistry across the planetary orbits, leaving a permanent, invisible trail of life-giving potential in its silent wake. As the body disintegrates and sheds its material, it sows the inner solar system with a rich layer of organic compounds and minerals. This continuous dispersal of material ensures that the ingredients for biology are never localized to a single world, but are shared across the family of planets. This structure of chemical scattering means that the space between the planets is not empty, but filled with the floating remains of these icy messengers. If a planet happens to be in the right place at the right time, it can gather this falling debris, integrating the legacy into itself. It is a slow, multi-generational process of celestial fertilization that has been occurring for as long as the sun and the planets have existed. As you let your breath out and feel your body settle into a state of total peace, consider the invisible rain of dust falling. We're constantly breathing in and walking through the remnants of comets that passed by our world in the deep, forgotten past of Earth. The legacy of these wanderers is not just in the sky, but is woven into the very soil beneath our feet and air. In this final stage of the messenger's journey, we are literally observing the original recipe of our solar system evaporating before our very eyes. The sublimation of the ancient ice is a live, dynamic broadcast of the same chemical reactions that built our sun and every world. We're granted a fleeting front-row seat to the dismantling of an ancient frozen archive, witnessing the raw ingredients of existence being released. This grand, evaporating display is a profound reminder that everything we know is ultimately composed of these same primordial ancient chemical substances from space. The comet is not an alien object, but a mirror reflecting the fundamental genesis of our own planetary neighbourhood and our biological history. By watching the ice turn to gas and the dust return to the void, we are learning the secret language of the cosmos. The ancient icy wanderer returns to its dark, dormant state, completely stripping away its glorious costume as it slinks back into the freezing abyss. Yet, the knowledge it leaves behind is a permanent gift to our understanding of the universe and our place within its grand design. What remains is a quiet, altered rock, carrying the silent memory of its spectacular temporary burn through the bright, chaotic heart of our neighbourhood. That silent memory of a spectacular burn through our neighbourhood was once interpreted not through the cold lens of chemistry, but through the deep, visceral reaction of the human soul. For millennia, early observers looked up at the velvet night with a mixture of profound awe and paralysing terror, viewing comets as sudden, unpredictable omens. To them, a sword of fire appearing among the static constellations signalled the inevitable fall of kings or the arrival of devastating plagues. This celestial apparition was perceived as a chaotic intruder in the clockwork heavens, a disruptor of the sacred order that was thought to govern the mortal world below. The appearance of a hairy star often triggered massive social upheaval, as people sought to interpret the specific curve of its tail or the intensity of its glow. Priests and shamans studied the sky with the same intensity we now reserve for the most powerful telescopes, searching for a message from the divine. They lived in a world where the sky was a living text, and a comet was a warning that the narrative was about to take a dark and sudden turn. This ancient perspective formed the foundation of our historical relationship with these visitors, weaving them into the very fabric of our myths and early civilizations. By looking into the past, we see that the terror they felt was the first step toward the curiosity that defines our modern understanding. One of the most famous and enduring historical records of this cosmic intrusion is woven into the heavy, aged linen of the Bayeux Tapestry. This masterpiece of embroidery immortalizes the striking appearance of Halley's comet in the year 1066, a time of immense political transformation for the English crown. As King Harold sits upon his throne, a group of frightened men point toward the sky where a star with a trailing tail of fire looms over the court. To the contemporary viewer, this was not a mere astronomical event, but a clear sign from the divine that the kingdom was about to be reshaped by blood and conquest. The tapestry captures the collective gasp of a nation, preserving the visual impact of the icy wanderer in a medium that has survived for nearly 1,000 years. It depicts the comet with several sharp, jagged tails, a visual representation of the fear and chaos it was believed to bring to the land. This artistic record serves as a bridge between the celestial and the historical, linking the arrival of an icy body from the outer dark to the Norman invasion. It reminds us that for much of human history, the movements of the stars were seen as being intimately tied to the fates of men. The cool night breeze, as an ancient astronomer traces a bright streak across parchment, is replaced here by the meticulous work of the needle and thread. Long before the looms of Europe were threaded with stories of conquest, Chinese astronomers were already keeping the most meticulous and comprehensive records of the heavens. They poetically termed these visitors broom stars, observing how they seemed to sweep the celestial dust from the static backdrop of the constellations. Spanning thousands of years, these court observers logged the precise dates, colours, and positions of every glowing visitor that graced the imperial sky. They recognized that these objects were not all identical, classifying them by the number of their tails and the specific direction of their sweeping celestial movement. These records are not just historical curiosities, but provide a continuous, unbroken history of cometary activity that is still used by modern science today. By cross-referencing these ancient texts with modern orbital data, we can trace the long-term heritage of objects that have visited our system dozens of times. The dedication of these early watchers reflects a deep cultural belief that the harmony of the sky was essential to the stability of the Earth. If we were to look closer at their bamboo scrolls, we would see a level of detail that rivals the logs of modern observatories. This ancient work ensures that even the most fleeting visitor leaves a permanent mark on the collective memory of our species. As you lie there, feeling the cool night breeze on your skin, imagine the quiet scratch of a brush on silk in an ancient observatory. Your own steady presence is the latest link in a chain of human attention that stretches back through the shadows of time. Allow the history of the world to rest lightly upon you as you drift in the present. The ancient cycle of fear and superstition finally began to dissolve when the brilliant mind of Edmund Halley applied the newly forged laws of physics to the heavens. He was the first to realize that these wandering celestial bodies were not random, chaotic intruders, but legitimate members of the solar family. By meticulously studying the historical records of his predecessors, he perceived a repeating pattern that others had missed in the noise of the past. Halley proposed that the universe operated on a magnificent clockwork mechanism that could be calculated and predicted by the human mind. This shift from mystery to mathematics was a revolutionary moment in the history of human thought, turning a terrifying omen into a solvable equation. He saw that the comet was subject to the same gravitational forces as the planets, forever tethering it to the sun. This structure of thinking replaced divine whim with universal law, providing a sense of order to the vast and terrifying emptiness of space. Surprisingly, the universe began to feel a little smaller and more intimate once we understood that these visitors were following a predictable path. It was the first step toward a future where we would not just watch the comets, but reach out to touch them. To prove this revolutionary hypothesis, Halley meticulously calculated the orbital paths of the great comets seen in the years 1531, 1607, and 1682. He realized that the mathematical curves of these three separate events were identical, leading him to the bold conclusion that they were the exact same object. He predicted that this specific visitor would return to our skies in 1758, a feat of scientific prophecy that he did not live to see. When the glowing light appeared exactly where and when he said it would, the realization forever changed our relationship with the deep void of space. This spectacular return proved that the same gravitational forces governing the fall of a stone on Earth also dictated the path of a mountain in the dark. It was the birth of celestial mechanics, a new era where the motions of the heavens were no longer a secret kept by the gods. This specific comet now bears his name, a permanent monument to the man who stripped the heavens of their ancient terror. The cool night breeze, as an ancient astronomer traces a bright streak across parchment, was finally replaced by the certainty of a calculated return. It remains the most famous comet in history, a symbol of the power of human observation and the clarity of reason. The realization that comets belong to the solar system fundamentally shifted the human understanding of gravity from a local terrestrial phenomenon to a truly universal law. It proved that the sun's influence was not limited to the bright nearby planets, but reached out into the cold abyss to tether even the most distant wanderers. This revelation provided the first physical evidence that the laws of nature were consistent throughout the entire observable universe. The comet became a primary laboratory for testing the laws of motion, demonstrating that even the most erratic-seeming paths are subject to the same fundamental equations. This intellectual leap paved the way for the modern exploration of space, turning the frightening omens of old into reliable companions of our solar journey. It allowed us to map the invisible boundaries of our star's gravity, realizing how far our home truly extends into the dark. As we understood the physics behind the light, the comet transitioned from a symbol of chaos to a symbol of the profound unity of the cosmos. If we were to look closer at the history of science, we would see that these icy visitors were the key to unlocking the secrets of the planets. They forced us to expand our horizons and recognize the immense scale of the neighborhood we inhabit. Your body remains grounded and heavy, much like the planet that anchors you, even as your mind follows the vast, curving mathematics of the comet's path. Feel the security of the Earth's steady pull, a constant force that mirrors the invisible threads holding the solar system together. You are safe in the grip of the same laws that guide the stars. The human connection to these celestial visitors is sometimes so profound that it borders on the poetic, as seen in the remarkable life of the writer Mark Twain. He was born in 1835, just as Halley's Comet was making its grand appearance in the night sky. In his later years, he famously observed that he had arrived with the comet and predicted he would depart the world upon its next return. He remarked that the Almighty had said these two unaccountable freaks should go out together, a prophecy that came true with startling precision. Twain passed away in 1910, exactly one day after the comet reached its closest approach to the Sun. This strange, synchronistic bond between a single human life and a distant, icy wanderer highlights our enduring desire to see ourselves reflected in the grand movements of the heavens. Surprisingly, the universe occasionally aligns our small stories with its massive orbital cycles in ways that defy simple coincidence. It provides a sense of narrative symmetry to our existence, making the vastness of space feel connected to the brevity of a human life. The comet becomes more than a rock. It becomes a companion to our history, measuring the passage of our generations. During that same 1910 passage, a brief moment of intense global panic ensued when it was discovered that the Earth would pass directly through the tail. Astronomers had detected the presence of cyanogen, a toxic gas, within the glowing ribbons of the comet's expansive atmosphere. This led to sensational headlines claiming that the entire population of the planet would be suffocated as we swept through the celestial debris. Enterprising charlatans sold gas masks, comet pills, and even specialized umbrellas to protect the terrified public from the invisible poisonous rain. Many people spent the night of the transit in sealed rooms or underground bunkers, waiting for a catastrophe that never arrived. In reality, the transit passed with absolutely no ill effects on human health, demonstrating the extreme gossamer thinness of the cometary structure. The event proved that a tail spanning millions of miles is actually a vacuum so pure it cannot even be detected by our most sensitive instruments. It was a humbling lesson in the scale of the universe, showing that even the most immense celestial structures are often made of almost nothing. The cool night breeze as an ancient astronomer traces a bright streak across parchment remains the only thing one truly feels during such a crossing. Even in our modern age of high-powered satellite arrays and massive deep space telescopes, the tradition of the solitary, patient observer remains remarkably alive. Today, amateur astronomers sitting in their backyards still discover new comets using basic optical equipment and an incredible amount of dedication. They spend countless cold nights scanning the familiar star fields, for the faint fuzzy smudge that indicates a new visitor has entered the inner system. These citizen scientists provide a crucial service to the world, acting as a global net that catches the subtle arrivals that automated systems might overlook. Their passion for the sky is a direct continuation of the ancient watchers who first logged the broom stars thousands of years ago. It is a pursuit that requires no massive budget or government grant, only a clear view of the horizon and a love for the unknown. This structure of grassroots discovery reminds us that the heavens are still open to anyone with the curiosity to look. Many of the most famous comets of recent decades were first spotted by individuals with a simple telescope and a sharp eye. It is a beautiful, democratic aspect of astronomy that allows a single person to contribute a new piece to the grand puzzle of the cosmos. A particularly memorable visitor named Neowise united millions of people across the globe in 2020 during a time of immense global crisis and isolation. As the world sat in a state of collective uncertainty, the comet appeared as a steady, glowing beacon in the dawn and dusk skies. It offered a rare and much-needed moment of perspective, reminding us that the universe continues its grand, enduring cycles regardless of our local troubles. The comet's long, twin tails were visible to the naked eye, providing a beautiful distraction that could be shared by anyone with a clear view of the stars. It became a symbol of resilience and a quiet reminder of the beauty that still exists in the world, even when things feel dark. People took to their balconies and hillsides to photograph the visitor, creating a global community of wonder linked by a single point of light. Neowise did not arrive as an omen of doom, but as a luminous witness to our shared capacity for collective awe and scientific appreciation. Its appearance provided a sense of continuity, a bridge between our troubled present and the ancient, unchanging rhythms of the wider solar system. As it retreated back into the freezing abyss, it left behind a memory of peace and a renewed sense of our place in the cosmos. Let the peace of that shared wonder settle over you now, as you find rest in the quiet of the present moment. Your breath is part of a larger world, and that world is part of a grander cosmos that continues its slow, majestic dance. Rest in the knowledge that you are a witness to the history of the stars. That majestic dance occasionally leads the most daring of celestial voyagers toward a trial by fire unlike any other in our local solar neighbourhood. Certain comets, known specifically in the scientific community as Kreutz Sungrazers, perform a perilous and extreme orbital dive that brings them dangerously close to the turbulent, roiling surface of the Sun. They penetrate the very outer reaches of the solar atmosphere, navigating a realm where the distinction between solid matter and pure radiant energy begins to blur. Deep within the blinding, silent roar of solar flares licking the edge of a fragile ice mountain, these visitors experience the full, unshielded fury of our local star. The proximity is so intimate that they often fly within a few 100,000 miles of the solar photosphere, effectively brushing against the star's glowing skin. This journey represents the absolute limit of what any icy body can endure before being completely consumed by the cosmic furnace. As you lie here, feel the profound contrast between the absolute safety of your rest and the chaotic, fiery intensity of this distant solar encounter. Your breath is steady and calm, while the comet is subjected to a violent thermal onslaught that tests the very limits of its physical existence. Allow your mind to drift toward that bright horizon, witnessing a struggle between the ancient cold and the primordial heat of the star. Surprisingly, these modern daredevils are not solitary wanderers born of separate events, but are believed to be the scattered surviving fragments of one gargantuan progenitor comet that shattered into pieces centuries ago. This ancient, massive ancestor likely possessed a nucleus dozens of miles wide before it splintered under the immense, unyielding stress of a previous solar encounter. It was a singular, massive, icy mountain that met a violent end, leaving a trail of icy progeny to follow forever in its doomed footsteps. Each individual sungrazer observed today is a small, haunting reminder of a much larger celestial history that was once violently torn asunder. They are siblings born of the same catastrophic event, linked together by the same orbital path and the same inevitable fate of facing the Sun. This structure of fragmentation tells a story of a great breaking, a moment when the silence of the deep past was interrupted by the overwhelming gravitational might of the Sun. If we were to look closer at their trajectories, we would see a ghost family of ice drifting through the dark, each member waiting its turn to repeat the ancestral dive. They are the remnants of a lost world, a giant that once commanded the sky before being reduced to a swarm of brilliant suicidal shards. The legacy of that original giant lives on in every bright streak that dares to approach the solar fire. Hurtling through the solar suburbs at staggering, almost incomprehensible speeds exceeding 1,000,000 miles per hour, these objects encounter a physical environment of absolute extremes. The intense, unshielded heat of the star's lower corona instantly vaporizes the blackened protective outer crusts that have guarded the pristine ice for countless eons. This rapid, violent transformation turns the comet's dark surface into a chaotic, erupting battlefield of pressurized gas and disintegrating minerals. The velocity is so great that the comet would cover the distance between the Earth and the Moon in a matter of a few short hours. At such speeds, the interaction with the thin solar atmosphere creates a shockwave of energized particles that glows with a fierce, unnatural light. The comet becomes a shimmering, translucent ghost of itself, its solid form obscured by the sheer volume of material being stripped away by the heat. Notice the gentle, heavy stillness of your own body, a perfect anchor in a universe where such violent and rapid movements occur. You're resting in a place of equilibrium, far from the 1,000,000-mile-per-hour winds that define the life of a sungrazer. Let the realization of your own stability provide a sense of deep, unshakable comfort as you observe the distant, high-speed drama of the cosmos. This structure of extreme proximity means that many of these fragile, icy fragments simply do not possess the structural integrity to survive the brutal passage of perihelion. As they approach the point of absolute closest contact, the overwhelming thermal energy causes them to disintegrate completely into a cloud of invisible solar dust. They vanish from the view of our most sensitive instruments, leaving behind only a faint, dissipating trail that is quickly swallowed by the brilliance of the sun. The solar furnace is unforgiving, demanding a total and final sacrifice from those who venture too close to its radiant heart. For many sungrazers, the journey inward is a one-way pilgrimage into a fire that leaves absolutely nothing behind but a memory of light. The ancient ice, which survived for billions of years in the deep freeze of the Oort Cloud, is undone in a single terminal hour of solar exposure. This disappearance is not a failure, but a final return to the primordial state from which all matter in our system originally emerged. The comet dissolves into its fundamental atoms, its chemical secrets scattered into the solar wind and carried out across the planetary orbits. It is a peaceful, albeit violent, conclusion to a journey that began in the furthest, darkest corners of our star's influence. A few extraordinary voyagers, such as the famous comet Lovejoy, managed to miraculously emerge from the blinding solar corona seemingly intact and defiant. Against all scientific odds, these icy mountains pass directly through the 1,000,000-degree plasma of the sun's atmosphere and reappear on the other side, still glowing with a beautiful light. This survival challenges our fundamental understanding of cometary resilience, proving that even a small frozen heart can sometimes withstand the most intense fires imaginable. Watching such a survival is a moment of profound astronomical wonder, as the visitor emerges from the glare like a phoenix rising from the ashes of its own tail. The comet appears renewed, though its mass is heavily depleted and its surface is freshly scarred by the solar lick. It carries with it the incredible story of having touched the face of a star and lived to tell the tale through its glowing wake. Your mind remains clear and open, mirroring the vast, transparent void where these celestial dramas unfold with silent majesty. As you breathe, consider the resilience of the things that endure, the quiet strength that allows life and matter to persist through the greatest trials. You're a part of that same enduring fabric, resting now in a state of peaceful, quiet strength. High-tech satellites stationed in the void to monitor the sun's activity frequently spot tiny, previously unknown comets making their final, fiery plunge. These doomed visitors are often only discovered in their final hours of life, appearing as bright, suicidal streaks on specialized solar cameras like SOHO. They serve as a constant visual reminder that the sun is a powerful gravitational magnet that is always calling the debris of the outer system back to its core. These observations reveal that our star is far more active in consuming its neighbourhood than we ever suspected before we had eyes in space. Every day, small chunks of ancient ice and rock are drawn out of the dark and into the light, ending their long journeys in a brief flash of glory. The satellites capture these final moments with a clinical, unblinking eye, logging the departure of countless anonymous wanderers from the cosmic stage. If we were to look closer at these records, we would see a continuous rain of material falling into the solar fire from every direction. It is a slow, multi-billion-year process of cleaning the solar system, as the sun gradually reclaims the leftover materials from the birth of the planets. Each tiny streak is a finished story, a mission completed, as the comet finally reaches the centre of its long elliptical dance. The sheer gravitational pull of the sun subjects the nucleus to a level of physical stress that is almost impossible to replicate on the solid ground of a planet. These tidal forces work like invisible giant hands, pulling at the leading and trailing edges of the body with enough force to stretch the fragile ice into an elongated shape. The internal structure of the comet nucleus groans under this immense tension, a silent struggle between the cohesion of ancient ice and the gravity of a star. This structure of stretching often leads to the final shattering of the core even before the heat can do its work, as the gravity literally tears the mountain apart. The nucleus might split into a string of pearls, each fragment following the same path but slowly drifting away from its siblings. This gravitational stretching is a profound demonstration of the sun's absolute dominance over every physical object within its massive invisible reach. Even as the comet fights to stay whole, the star's pull is relentless, moulding the icy body into a form that better suits the demands of the orbit. It is a physical dialogue between the small and the large, a moment where the most basic laws of physics are written in the shattering of ice. The comet is not just a visitor. It is a subject of the sun, forced to adapt its very shape to the star's overwhelming presence. Watching a comet successfully navigate this fiery gauntlet is a profound testament to the unexpected resilience of ancient, primordial ice. It demonstrates that the materials formed in the deep freeze of the original nebula possess a strange, enduring strength that can endure the most hostile environments in the system. This resilience offers a glimmer of philosophical hope, showing that even the most delicate structures can survive the most overwhelming trials if their core remains true. The ice of a comet is not like the ice in a human glass. It is a complex, reinforced matrix of silicate dust and organic polymers that acts as a natural heat shield. This sophisticated, accidental architecture allows the interior to remain frozen at hundreds of degrees below zero, even while the surface is being cooked by solar flares. It is a masterpiece of natural engineering, a shield forged in the dark to survive the brief, intense meeting with the light. As your muscles loosen and you settle into the soft embrace of your surroundings, reflect on this hidden resilience within the fragile. You're capable of enduring more than you know, just like the ancient ice that defies the fire of a star. Rest in the knowledge that your own core is strong, grounded, and perfectly capable of navigating the changing seasons of your life. Even the fortunate survivors of such an encounter emerge from the solar fire significantly altered, having shed massive layers of their geological history in a single brutal day. The intense heat peels away the ancient weathered surface, revealing deep interior ice that has not seen the light or felt warmth for billions of years. They are shrunken, scarred versions of their former selves, having traded a vast portion of their substance for the privilege of a close stellar encounter. This loss of material is a physical shedding of the past, as the comet leaves behind its oldest memories in the form of a massive glowing tail. The newly exposed surface is raw and active, frequently erupting with fresh geysers of gas and dust as the interior ice reacts to the lingering warmth. The comet is effectively reborn in the fire, its physical identity fundamentally reshaped by the intensity of the solar experience. Surprisingly, the universe requires this kind of transformation for something to truly show its inner nature to the world. Only by passing through the fire can the comet reveal the pristine, untouched materials that have been hidden at its heart since the beginning of time. The survivor is a different object than the one that entered the corona, a leaner and more focused voyager ready for the next stage of its journey. Their newly shaped orbits will eventually fling them back out into the freezing void, sending them away from the heat and back toward the safety of the dark. They leave the sun forever changed by their brief, intense encounter with the star, carrying the physical and chemical scars of their ordeal into the abyss. As they retreat, they fade back into the silent black background of the stars, waiting for the long, cold centuries to pass before they must face the fire again. The transition from the blinding light of the corona back to the absolute darkness of the outer system is a slow, cooling relief for the battered nucleus. The erupting jets gradually quiet down, the glowing coma shrinks, and the magnificent tails dissipate into the general interplanetary dust. The Wanderer returns to its dormant state, a quiet rock once again, but one that now holds the secret experience of the solar fires within its shrunken frame. Your breath is part of a larger world, and that world is part of a grander cosmos that continues its slow, majestic dance. Rest in the knowledge that you are a witness to the history of the stars. The comet's journey is a reflection of the eternal cycles of the universe, a constant movement between the fire and the frost, the light and the dark. The constant movement between the fire and the frost leaves behind a haunting, invisible legacy that traces the exact path of the traveller through the cold. As the comet surrenders its physical substance to the sun's warmth, it leaves behind a wide, sprawling river of debris that lingers in the void like breadcrumbs scattered in the dark. This trail is not composed of massive boulders, but of microscopic silicate grains and tiny pebbles of ancient ice that have been cast off from the core by the pressure of outgassing. These fragments do not simply vanish into the abyss, but remain anchored to the same elliptical orbit, creating a spectral highway of dust that stretches for billions of miles across the solar neighbourhood. The path of the comet becomes a permanent dusty scar across the solar system, a physical record of every passage the body has ever made through the inner system. Over centuries, these particles spread out, forming a continuous, overlapping stream of material that marks the ghost of the Wanderer's presence, even when the nucleus is light years away. If we were to look closer at this cosmic wake, we would see a silent, shimmering ribbon of matter reflecting the distant light of the stars. It is a quiet, enduring testament to the thousands of years of shedding and transformation the icy heart has endured during its countless orbits. This river of debris acts as a bridge between the past and the present, waiting for the moments when worlds collide with its ancient memory. Surprisingly, our own blue world is not isolated from these ghostly rivers of dust, but frequently passes directly through their invisible, expansive paths. Whenever the Earth's orbit intersects one of these dusty rivers, we experience the breathtaking beauty of a meteor shower appearing in our nighttime sky. The planet acts as a massive gravitational scoop, gathering the ancient breadcrumbs left behind by the comet during its previous sunward voyages. This encounter turns the silent, dark vacuum of space into a dynamic theatre of light and energy as the debris meets our protective atmosphere. The particles, which have drifted for eons in the vacuum, suddenly experience the violent friction of air for the very first time. They are transformed from cold, dark grains into brilliant streaks of fire that dance across the familiar constellations. Notice the rhythmic, steady rise and fall of your chest as you consider this celestial meeting of orbits. You're standing on a planet that is currently hurtling through these invisible clouds of history, catching the fragments of the deep past. The encounter is a perfectly timed celestial appointment, a moment where the path of our home world touches the wake of a visiting giant. The famous Perseid meteor shower, which graces the warm August nights of the Northern Hemisphere, is born from the lingering dust of Comet Swift-Tuttle. This massive visitor takes over 100 years to complete its long, lonely journey around the Sun, shedding a fresh supply of material with every return. The debris it leaves behind is particularly dense, creating one of the most reliable and spectacular displays of celestial fireworks known to our species. This structure of predictable beauty provides a sense of continuity to our lives, linking the warm nights of summer to the freezing depths of the outer system. The dust of Swift-Tuttle, once part of a cold mountain near the edge of the Sun's reach, now provides a moment of shared wonder for millions. It is a magnificent annual return of a history that is 4.5 billion years old. Halley's Comet, perhaps the most iconic of all celestial wanderers, is singularly responsible for two separate and distinct meteor showers that appear at different points in our year. Because its orbit crosses the path of the Earth twice, we encounter its ancient trail during both the Eta Aquarids in the spring and the Orionids in the late autumn. This dual legacy ensures that the presence of this famous visitor is felt even when the comet itself is hidden in the dark. The fragments being caught by our atmosphere today are likely thousands of years old, having been shed during passages that were witnessed by ancient civilizations. Every streak of light in these showers is a piece of the same nucleus that was once calculated and predicted with newfound mathematics. It is a profound, recurring connection to one of the most significant objects in the history of human discovery. If we were to look closer at these twin streams, we would see how the comet's path has been intricately woven into the very fabric of our orbital calendar. The Orionids emerge from the heart of the Hunter constellation, while the Eta Aquarids grace the early morning hours of the spring sky. The memory of Halley is literally written in the stars twice every single year, a shimmering reminder of its enduring influence. What we witness from the ground is not the particle itself, but the long glowing tube of energized air that marks its destructive passage through the thin atmosphere. The grain of sand sacrifices its entire physical existence in a single, magnificent burst of light, converting its motion into pure thermal energy and radiant beauty. It is a spectacular, high-speed dissolution of matter that occurs 60 miles above our heads, far above the reach of our clouds and our daily concerns. As your muscles loosen and the physical tension fully leaves your limbs, imagine the extreme lightness of these tiny projectiles. They represent the ultimate triumph of velocity over mass, a whisper of material creating a roar of visual energy in the dark. The quick, brilliant flash of a shooting star is the final, beautiful exclamation point at the end of a journey that spanned billions of miles. Deep within these celestial rivers, the debris streams left behind by comets are not static, unchanging structures, but dynamic clouds that can drift and shift over vast stretches of time. Influenced by the subtle gravitational pulls of the giant planets, these dusty regions can move into or out of the Earth's path across several centuries, this causing meteor showers to ebb and flow in intensity, sometimes producing legendary meteor storms and at other times fading into a faint, barely noticeable drizzle. History records rare moments when the sky seemed to rain fire as the Earth passed through a particularly dense and fresh knot of cometary material. These storms can produce thousands of meteors per hour, a terrifying and beautiful spectacle that has haunted human memory for generations. Conversely, an ancient stream may gradually dissipate as its particles are scattered by the solar wind, eventually disappearing from our seasonal cycles entirely. This structure of constant change highlights the fluid, living nature of the solar system's environment. We are witnessing a slow-motion evolution of the sky, where the paths of the planets and the wakes of the comets are in a continuous gravitational dialogue. The showers we enjoy today may be vastly different from the ones our ancestors saw, or the ones our descendants will witness in the distant future. This structure of fragmentation can be far more extreme than simple shedding, as sometimes a comet experiences a catastrophic failure of its internal structure and completely fragments into pieces. This violent disintegration leaves behind a clustered ghost trail of floating gravel, boulders, and massive blocks of ice that remain huddled together in space. These fragments continue to travel along the original orbit, a broken and silent funeral procession of what was once a singular, mighty mountain. The disintegration can be caused by the intense heat of the sun, or by the overwhelming gravitational stress of passing too close to a large planet. The result is a sprawling, irregular cloud of debris that can span millions of miles, creating a much broader and more chaotic trail than a typical comet. This ghost trail becomes a permanent feature of the system, a collection of shards that each carry a piece of the original heart. Notice the heavy, grounding weight of the world beneath you, a stark contrast to the light and scattered remnants of a broken world. These fragments are the bones of a comet, drifting forever in a state of suspended ruin. They represent the fragile, temporary nature of even the largest structures in the solar system when faced with the overwhelming power of gravity and light. If we were to look closer at a particularly striking example of this process, we would find Comet Schwarzmann-Wachmann 3, which was recently observed crumbling into dozens of mini-comets. As it travelled through the dark, the comet began to shed massive chunks of itself, each fragment developing its own tiny coma and tail of escaping gas. The sight was like a fleet of small glowing ships sailing together across the black expanse of the inner solar system, a family of ice drifting into the unknown. This spectacular breaking allowed scientists to see directly into the interior of the original nucleus, revealing the layered and porous nature of the ancient ice. The fragments were of varying sizes, some as small as a house and others the size of a mountain, all slowly drifting apart as they followed their shared path. It was a live, high-definition broadcast of a celestial world falling to pieces before our very eyes, a rare window into the mortality of comets. The dissolution of this specific comet provides a unique window into the mechanics of how these bodies eventually meet their end. It shows that a comet does not always go out in a single dramatic impact, but can simply dissolve away into a family of smaller ghosts. This slow-motion crumbling is a peaceful, albeit transformative event that returns the materials of the past to the broader cosmos. The gradual and total dissolution of a comet is essentially a peaceful return of material to the vast, encompassing cosmic environment. Instead of remaining locked away in a cold, dark vault, the atoms that built the comet are released back into the sea of stars to be reused in future cycles. This process of returning to the void is an essential part of the life of a solar system, ensuring that matter is never truly lost, only reshaped. The dust and gas that once formed a jagged, icy spire are now free to mingle with the general dust of the inner system, or be swept away by the solar wind. Some of these particles may eventually find their way into the atmospheres of other planets, contributing their ancient chemistry to new worlds. It is a slow, multi-billion-year act of recycling that keeps the universe in a state of constant creative flux. As you find rest in the quiet of the present moment, consider the beauty of this total, selfless surrender to the greater whole. The comet does not fight its dissolution, but gracefully gives back everything it has gathered since the dawn of time. It is a beautiful, philosophical closing of the circle, a return to the dust from which all things were born. These flashes are the pulse of the solar system, a rhythmic reminder that the past is never truly gone, but is always raining down upon us from the heavens. Every time we look up and see a streak of light, we are connecting with the legacy of a wanderer that once braved the solar fires. The comet's journey is completed not in its orbital return, but in the moment its dust touches our world and turns into light. This legacy of light, and the connection to wanderers who brave the solar fires, suggest a heritage far vaster than the boundaries of our own solar neighbourhood. While we have long marvelled at the frozen relics of our local planetary cradle, we must now recognise that not all comets originated within the comforting gravitational embrace of our own solar system. Some of these icy voyagers are true strangers, born under the light of distant suns and cast out into the eternal night by the chaotic movements of alien giant planets. They are the heralds of distant galaxies, carrying the chemical fingerprints of star systems we may never reach with our own technology. This realization shifts our perspective, turning the night sky from a localized map into a wide open door to the rest of the Milky Way. We are no longer merely looking at our own history, but at the scattered fragments of a galactic family that shares the same fundamental physics. The deep darkness between the stars is revealed to be a busy highway for these ancient frozen travellers. They remind us that the sun is but one of many fires in a very large and crowded room. Every grain of their alien dust is a story from a place we will never go. In the year 2019, a sharp-eyed observer captured a faint, fast-moving smudge that would forever change our understanding of cosmic visitors. This object, named Borisov, became the first confirmed comet visiting from interstellar space, a singular event that transformed theoretical speculation into a tangible, observable reality. It did not possess the typical lazy orbit of a native comet, but instead hurtled through our system with a defiant, unstoppable momentum that spoke of a faraway origin. Astronomers watched with bated breath as this dark, lumpy mountain of ice revealed its true nature as a messenger from across the stellar divide. The detection was a triumph of modern technology and human persistence, proving that we now have the tools to identify the intruders in our midst. Borisov's presence was a shock to the scientific community, a beautiful and sudden reminder that the universe still holds immense surprises for those who watch the stars. It moved with a grace and a speed that separated it from everything we had seen before in our local sky. This visitor was a physical bridge to the unknown, a tangible piece of another world passing within reach of our collective sight. We witnessed the arrival of a legend, a traveller from the deep dark between the lights. This rogue wanderer had been travelling through the empty void between stars for millions, perhaps even billions, of years before it finally stumbled upon our local light. During its long, lonely transit, it witnessed the slow birth and death of distant stars, drifting in a silence so profound that the movement of individual atoms became its only companion. It carried its frozen secrets through the immense dark chasms that separate the lights of the galaxy, a silent witness to the sheer, staggering scale of the interstellar abyss. The comet was a survivor of a journey that began when the Earth was a vastly different place, crossing the void with an unyielding and ancient patience. Imagine the isolation of such a path, where for eons, not a single photon of sunlight touched the blackened surface of the nucleus. It is a testament to the hardiness of ice and dust that such a structure could remain intact for such a colossal stretch of time and distance. The Nomad did not seek us out. It was simply part of a vast, slow-motion dispersal of matter that defines the life of the galaxy. It is a quiet, profound realization that such a visitor has arrived at our doorstep after such an odyssey. Every mile of its journey is etched into its silent, unearthly, smooth surface. Surprisingly, the chemistry held within its frozen heart spoke of a homeworld that would appear entirely alien to our terrestrial eyes. Analysis of its chemical composition revealed that it was born around a red dwarf, a star entirely unlike our own bright yellow sun. These stars are smaller, cooler, and far more numerous in the galaxy, casting a dim crimson glow over their surrounding planetary systems. The ice of Borisov was forged in a landscape where the light was faint, and the building blocks of matter were assembled in different exotic proportions. It is a stunning realization that we have touched the chemical signature of a world orbiting a different kind of star, a place with a different history and a different future. The presence of carbon monoxide in its coma was far higher than what we see in our native comets, hinting at a much colder birthplace. This chemical alien is a mirror reflecting a version of the universe that exists far beyond our horizon. Notice how your own breath feels warm and steady, a sharp contrast to the billion-year freeze of a world that knew only the red light of a dying star. We are the recipients of a message written in a language we're only just beginning to learn. If we were to look closer at its path, we would see that the trajectory of an interstellar comet is fundamentally distinct, following a hyperbolic curve that resists the Sun's gravitational capture. This mathematical shape ensures that the visitor is merely passing through, a one-time guest that will never return once it leaves the warmth of our inner planets. Unlike the native comets that return to us in predictable cycles, this nomad is destined to return to the blackness of the interstellar void, forever fleeing the light of our star. It is a fleeting, singular encounter, a brief intersection of two entirely different cosmic destinies that will never meet again. The Sun acts only as a temporary pivot, a gravity well that bends the stranger's path just enough for us to take notice. Once it crosses the threshold of our inner system, it will accelerate back into the dark, carrying the heat of our Sun as a fading memory. This structure of movement is a profound reminder of the comet's true home, which lies in the empty spaces between the lights. We are watching a goodbye that has been in progress since the moment the visitor arrived at the edge of our vision. The stars are calling it back to the infinite night. Such visitors fly through our system with extreme, almost terrifying velocity, offering us only a fleeting glimpse of their alien chemistry before they vanish back into the dark. Because they are not bound by the Sun's gravity, they do not slow down as they approach the inner system, but instead use our star as a slingshot to propel themselves further into the galaxy. In the brief window of their passage, we must scramble to capture the unique chemical signals released by their sublimating ice. These molecules represent our only physical link to the deep interior of an alien star system, a sample of the universe's grand diversity. The speed at which they travel means that every observation is a race against time, a desperate attempt to read a book before it is snatched away. We are looking at matter that has never been part of our world and never will be again. This structure of high-speed transit highlights the transient nature of our meeting with the interstellar. The chemistry they reveal is a rare gift, a brief moment of clarity in the ongoing mystery of what lies beyond our Sun's reach. It is a violent, beautiful encounter with the truly unknown. These nomads suggest that the galaxy is not as empty as we once believed, but is instead filled with countless trillions of wandering ice blocks ejected from their home systems. Every star system, in the chaotic era of its formation, likely flings a significant portion of its icy debris into the interstellar medium through gravitational interactions with giant planets. This means the dark space between the stars is a vast hidden graveyard of lost worlds and forgotten mountains, drifting forever in a state of icy suspension. We are just beginning to realize the sheer number of these objects that must be populating the voids of the Milky Way, waiting for a chance to drift past a star. This structure of the galaxy implies that interstellar space is much more crowded and active than our old map suggested. It is a vibrant, moving ocean of primordial materials, a sea of ancient ice that connects every star in the sky. Each of these trillions of objects carries the history of a different sun, a different world and a different beginning. We are living in a neighbourhood that is much more interconnected than we ever dared to imagine. The void is not a barrier, but a bridge filled with the remnants of other lives. We're quietly sitting at a cosmic crossroads where debris from other worlds occasionally drifts past our porch without us ever noticing. We're living on a world that is constantly being visited by the microscopic and macroscopic remains of alien solar systems that have long since faded into the background. This realization turns our local neighborhood into a global museum of galactic history, where every point of light in the sky has likely sent a piece of itself toward our specific path through the stars. We are not isolated, but are intimately connected to the larger movements and dispersals of matter that define the life of the galaxy as a whole. Notice the heavy, grounding weight of the world beneath you, and then contrast it with the thought of these alien wanderers gliding silently through the vacuum just above our atmosphere. This crossroads is a place of endless meeting and parting, a silent exchange of matter that has been occurring for as long as the stars have shone in the dark. We're just now waking up to the fact that we are part of a much larger, much more dynamic conversation between the star systems. The universe is not just something we look at, it is something that is actively passing through our very presence. Every shooting star might be a greeting from a sun we will never see. The dust that Borisov left behind as it journeyed past our planets has now mingled permanently with the native dust of our own planetary neighbourhood. Every time the comet breathed out its ancient alien ice, it deposited a layer of interstellar history into the space we inhabit every day. This material will linger for billions of years, eventually being swept up by our own world or falling into the atmospheres of our nearby neighbours. The legacy of an alien star is now part of the very fabric of our local space, a chemical gift that will be preserved long after the comet itself has faded into the abyss. This structure of mingling ensures that the boundaries between star systems are porous and fluid, allowing the ingredients of one world to seed another. We are literally walking through the dust of a star system that we will never visit, breathing in the remnants of an alien history. This permanent mixing is a profound testament to the unity of the cosmos, where everything eventually becomes a part of everything else. The distinction between ours and theirs is a human invention that the universe does not recognize in its grand swirling dance. The dust of Borisov is now our dust, a permanent part of our solar home. It is a profound and humbling realization that ice from another star system is now floating near the orbit of Mars, a tangible piece of an alien world resting in our own backyard. This structure of matter bridges the gap between the familiar and the unknown, proving that the galaxy is a single, interconnected ecosystem where nothing is ever truly far away. The ice that once felt the warmth of a red dwarf now catches the faint, distant light of our own sun, a quiet voyager that has found a temporary resting place in our system. We're no longer limited to imagining what lies beyond. We can see its remnants drifting through our own local sky, waiting for the next gravitational nudge. This alien ice is a physical record of a place that exists trillions of miles away, brought to us by the slow, patient movements of the void. It serves as a final, beautiful synthesis of our journey, showing that the comets we watch are not just our own, but the universe's way of sharing its secrets. Every time we look up, we are seeing the light of our sun reflecting off a history that was born under a different star. This unearthly smooth surface carries the story of another sun, another sky, and another time. We are witnesses to the grand, silent wandering of the stars. Even as we witness that grand, silent wandering of the stars, the physical reality of these travellers is far more ghostly and insubstantial than their brilliant sky-spanning light suggests. Despite their magnificent displays that seem to fill the heavens with glowing substance, comets are primarily composed of empty space. They are less like solid, unyielding planets, and more like cosmic phantoms drifting through the dark, possessed of an inherent hollowness that defies our common intuition of celestial bodies. If we were to peel back the luminous veil of the coma, we would find a heart that is remarkably sparse, a structure where the absence of matter is as significant as the matter itself. This fundamental emptiness is not a defect, but a defining characteristic of their ancient primordial architecture. The brilliant glow we see from Earth is a masterpiece of light scattering, creating a vision of solid grandeur out of a mere handful of dust and ice. Surprisingly, the universe has found a way to make the void itself visible, using the tiniest fragments of primordial history to outline the shape of the nothingness. These wanderers do not occupy space so much as they haunt it, moving with a transparency that allows the distant stars to shine through their very centres. We are looking at a magnificent architecture of the void, a silent testament to the sparse beginnings of our solar home. Deep within this expansive, luminous shell, the density of material is so incredibly low that it rivals the most desolate regions of the interstellar medium. The comet is a beautiful lie of scale, a visual giant that weighs almost nothing in the grand balance of the cosmos. This inherent lightness is the secret to its ability to be sculpted by the invisible hands of the solar wind and the magnetic fields of the star. This structure is not a dense, impenetrable stone, but a delicate and airy framework of dust and ice held together by the weakest of cosmic threads. The nucleus of a comet is highly porous, resembling a delicate sponge more than a solid rock. If one could reach out and hold this ancient traveller, it would feel surprisingly fragile, as if the mere pressure of a human hand might cause the entire mountain to crumble into a fine, dark powder. The interior is riddled with a vast network of microscopic tunnels, caverns, and empty pockets that have remained untouched for billions of years. This sponge-like anatomy allows the comet to breathe, providing pathways for sublimating gases to find their way from the deep interior to the sunlit surface. It is a landscape of profound, heavy silence, where the very ground is composed of more shadows than substance. Because of this extreme porosity, the comet carries within it the very vacuum of the deep space from which it was born. The structure is so light that it barely registers as a physical presence against the backdrop of the massive heavy planets it passes. We are observing a mountain made of whispers, a porous monument to the quiet reaches of the outer solar system. This airy architecture acts as a sanctuary for the oldest materials in our neighbourhood, protecting them within its hollowed-out chambers. Every grain of silicate and every molecule of water is suspended in a web of nothingness, floating in a state of eternal airy grace. It is a spectacular demonstration of how the universe can build something of immense beauty out of the most minimal of physical foundations. Deep within the heart of this icy mountain, the vast majority of what we see and measure is actually nothing at all. Up to 80% of the volume inside a comet can be pure, unadulterated vacuum, a hollowed-out cathedral where the architecture is built mostly of the void itself. If you were to walk through the centre of a comet, you would spend most of your journey stepping through the same emptiness that exists between the stars. This high ratio of space to matter makes the comet a paradox of volume, occupying a massive amount of the sky while possessing almost no weight. The solid grains of dust and ice are merely the scaffolding for a great spherical absence. It is a geometry of ghosts, where the presence of a few primordial particles defines a much larger region of absolute nothingness. Surprisingly, the universe has crafted these mountains so delicately that their overall density is actually lower than that of liquid water. This fragile architecture makes them incredibly light, meaning that if you could find an ocean large enough, a chunk of comet material would effortlessly float upon the surface like a piece of cosmic driftwood. They are the light, airy remnants of a process that favoured the subtle over the heavy. As you rest here, notice the heavy, grounding weight of your own body as it settles into the support beneath you, a profound contrast to the airy lightness of the comet. While you are anchored by the firm gravity of a solid world, the comet exists in a state of nearly weightless suspension. Feel the security of your own density, a solid presence in a universe filled with such ghostly and porous wonders. This extreme lack of density means that comets are essentially the foam of the solar system, bubbles of ice and dust that have never been crushed by the weight of a planet. They have survived for billions of years in this delicate state, preserved by the silence and the cold of the outer reaches. Their existence is a reminder that even the most fragile structures can endure if they are kept far from the violent centres of change. To stand on such a surface would be to experience the ultimate freedom from the heavy chains of planetary existence. Every step would be a leap, and every breath would be a reminder of the thinness of the world beneath your feet. The comet does not want to hold you. It only offers a temporary resting place for a soul that belongs to the stars. This structure presents a unique and formidable challenge for those brave enough to attempt a physical meeting in the dark. Landing a probe on such a delicate and insubstantial surface requires specialised harpoons and anchoring screws to prevent the craft from simply bouncing off the airy terrain. Without being tethered to the nucleus, a visitor would merely skip away like a stone on a pond, lost forever to the weak pull of the mountain. The ground of a comet is often more like a bank of newly fallen snow than solid rock, offering no resistance to a landing craft that might simply sink into the porous interior. Engineers must design machines that can grip the nothingness, finding a way to stay attached to a world that is 80% empty space. It is a technical struggle to find a foothold on a phantom, a mission to anchor our curiosity to a mountain made of whispers. When we successfully tether ourselves to these bodies, we are essentially hitching a ride on a piece of the original nebula. We become part of its fragile architecture, feeling the subtle vibrations of its outgassing and the silence of its hollow heart. It is a profound achievement to have reached out and touched the most delicate thing in the solar system. Heat travels extremely slowly through this airy structure, as the vast internal pockets of vacuum act as a perfect and nearly impenetrable thermal insulator. This creates a strange and fascinating reality, where the interior remains completely frozen at primordial temperatures, even as the surface boils and erupts under the sun's glare. The core stays in the deep freeze of history, entirely unaware of the chaotic high-energy environment just a few meters above. Notice the warmth of your own skin and the steady internal heat that sustains your life, a biological fire that stands in stark opposition to the comet's frozen heart. While your environment might change, your internal state remains a constant, vital pulse of energy and life. The comet, too, maintains its ancient internal state, though it does so through the silence of the void rather than the activity of the cell. This thermal isolation is what allows a comet to serve as a pristine time capsule, keeping its ancient chemical records safe from the transformative power of solar radiation. The surface may be a chaotic battlefield of sublimation and outgassing, but the heart remains a sanctuary of absolute unmoving cold. It is a dual existence, a mountain of ice that is simultaneously burning in the light and freezing in the dark. If we were to look closer at the massive glowing cloud of gas and dust surrounding the nucleus, we would find a density that is almost spiritual in its thinness. The vast glowing coma that outshines planets and stretches for millions of miles is actually thinner than the best and most sophisticated laboratory vacuums ever created on Earth. It is a magnificent, sprawling apparition made of almost nothing, a ghostly veil that exists on the very edge of non-existence. Despite its ability to block out the light of distant stars and create a visual spectacle that rivals the sun, the coma is essentially a vacuum that happens to contain a few scattered glowing molecules. If you were to fly through this region, you would feel no resistance, no wind, and no physical presence of the cloud that appears so solid from a distance. It is a triumph of light over matter, a grand performance where the actors are few but the stage is infinitely wide. This extreme diffusion allows the solar wind to move through the coma with ease, sculpting it into the magnificent tails we see from our planetary home. The comet does not fight the environment, it flows with it, allowing itself to be thinned and stretched by the invisible forces of the star. It is a beautiful demonstration of the power of the diffuse, showing that even the most tenuous clouds can command the attention of an entire world. A comet is an optical illusion of grandeur, a mere whisper of material catching the solar light and stretching it across the black canvas of the heavens. Its presence in the sky is defined by how it scatters and reflects the sun's rays, rather than by the actual physical weight of its own body. It is a cosmic sleight of hand performed by the smallest grains of dust and the thinnest vapours of ice. The visual impact of a comet is vastly disproportionate to its physical substance, making it the most efficient beauty in the universe. It creates a masterpiece of light and form out of almost nothing, using the vacuum as its canvas and the solar wind as its brush. We are mesmerized by a shadow, a fleeting reflection of a star's power bouncing off a mountain of porous ice. This structure of illusion reminds us that greatness is not measured by size or density. but by the ability to interact with the light. The comet is a brilliant herald precisely because it is so thin and so open to the forces that surround it. It does not occupy the sky with mass, it occupies it with radiance, a shining ghost in the dark. It is a spectacular paradox that such minimal substance can command so much attention in the night sky and throughout the long, winding history of human thought. This anatomy of nothingness reminds us that beauty and influence do not require density, mass, or solid weight to be truly and deeply overwhelming. The most fragile, porous, and airy things in the universe can leave the most permanent and profound impressions on our collective souls. We have witnessed the grandeur of the void, seeing how a mere whisper of material can paint a masterpiece across the black canvas of the heavens. The comet is a reminder that the universe is mostly space, and that within that space, even the smallest fragments can shine with a brilliance that outlasts the ages. Rest now in the anatomy of nothingness, a place where the light finds a home in the silence. This unearthly smooth surface carries the story of another sun, another sky, and another time. We are witnesses to the grand, silent wandering of the stars. The grand, silent wandering of the stars eventually leads every icy traveller to an inevitable, quiet depletion of its very essence. A comet cannot sustain its brilliant, sky-spanning display forever, as each perilous trip past the sun aggressively depletes the ancient icy reserves stored within its core. This physical cost of proximity is a relentless thermal tax that the local star extracts with every single orbit, slowly peeling away the layers of history that were once frozen in the deep dark. The sun acts as a brilliant but demanding merchant, trading spectacular visibility for the very substance of the comet's mountain-sized body. As the ice vanishes into the void, the internal structure becomes increasingly fragile and drained of the volatile energy that once powered its magnificent tails. It is a slow, multi-generational sacrifice that defines the mortal nature of these otherwise timeless-seeming celestial wanderers. Every molecule that escapes into the vacuum represents a small part of the comet that will never return to the cold safety of the outer nurseries. Eventually the reservoir runs dry, and the vibrant, luminous identity of the comet begins to flicker like a candle reaching the end of its wick. This terminal phase is not a failure, but the natural conclusion of a journey that was always meant to be transformative and finite. Over thousands of years, the once vibrant geysers that erupted with such fierce and focused power slowly begin to die down as the volatile ice evaporates entirely. The rhythmic, cyclical breathing of the comet, which once filled the inner system with vast clouds of gas and dust, settles into a permanent and heavy stillness. What was once a landscape of active, hissing vents and spiralling halos becomes a static world of cold, unmoving shadow. The internal pressure that drove these spectacular fountains of material finally dissipates as the deep pockets of frozen carbon and nitrogen are spent. This transition from a living, breathing entity to a silent stone is one of the most profound shifts in the life of a solar system object. The comet loses the ability to generate its own atmosphere, surrendering the magnificent emerald-tinted coma that once made it larger than planets. This slow silencing is a peaceful, albeit inevitable, surrender to the laws of entropy that govern the entire cosmos. The comet no longer fights the vacuum, but merges with its stillness, becoming a quiet passenger on a path it once dominated with light. The era of the brilliant herald is over, replaced by a much longer epoch of stony, dormant existence in the dark. What remains after the last of the surface ice has vanished is a dark, inactive shell of dust and rock known to the watchers of the sky as an extinct comet. This structure is a hollowed-out ghost of its former self, a blackened mountain that no longer reacts to the sun's warmth with a glowing display of light. It moves through the inner system as a silent, invisible voyager, its surface covered in a thick matte mantle of carbon-rich gravel that absorbs the light rather than reflecting it. This dull, charcoal-coloured husk is among the darkest objects in the known universe, reflecting less light than a piece of freshly paved asphalt. Without the reflective shimmer of ice, or the scattering of a dust tail, the object becomes nearly impossible to spot against the velvet blackness of space. It is a physical monument to a journey completed, a silent record of a spectacular life that has finally reached its quiet, stony retirement. The extinct comet continues to follow its ancient elliptical path, a dark shadow drifting through the bright sunlit neighbourhoods of the inner planets. It carries the weight of its history in the minerals and dust that remain, a skeletal reminder of the mountain of ice it once was. Surprisingly, the universe has found a clever way to hide these exhausted travellers in plain sight among the more familiar residents of our local solar neighbourhood. Many objects currently classified as ordinary asteroids in our solar system are likely the burnt-out husks of ancient comets that have long since surrendered their icy hearts. They have successfully masqueraded as rocky debris for millions of years, their true cometary origins hidden beneath a thick protective layer of processed space dust. This structure of hidden identity means that the asteroid belt is not just a collection of rocks, but a celestial graveyard for the exhausted heralds of the outer system. These objects have found a permanent home in the stable regions of the system, settling into a quiet retirement far from the destructive heat of the sun. They are the survivors of a long-gone era, their stories written in the subtle chemical differences that distinguish them from the native rocks of the belt. We are living in a neighbourhood where the ghosts of ancient ice are hiding in plain sight, masquerading as simple stones. This hidden diversity within the asteroid population reminds us that the history of the solar system is much more dynamic and complex than its current appearance might suggest. Notice how the heavy, grounding stillness of your own body right now mirrors the patient, unmoving state of these hidden cosmic ghosts. You're resting securely in the present, while these objects rest in the deep history of a journey that once bridged the gap between the stars. Some enter a dormant state, developing a thick crust of dust and heavy organics that perfectly insulates deep ice until a random collision awakens them again. This dormancy can last for millions of years, protected by a surface that has become so thick and solid that it no longer allows the interior to breathe. However, this piece is not necessarily permanent, as a random high-speed collision with another piece of space debris can shatter the protective shell and expose the fresh ice to the sun. In an instant, the ancient geysers can be reignited, awakening the silent ghost and transforming it back into a brilliant herald of the inner system. The possibility of reawakening adds a layer of dormant drama to the otherwise quiet and stony existence of these objects. They are like sleeping giants, carrying the potential for light and energy within a shell of absolute dark stillness. This hidden vitality is a testament to the resilience of the materials that built our world. Other comets meet a far more sudden and dramatic end to their long wandering journeys, plunging directly into the massive swirling atmospheres of the giant planets. One of the most spectacular examples in modern history was the violent multi-stage impact of Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 as it collided with the gas giant Jupiter. The comet did not fade away into a stony ghost, but was torn apart by the planet's immense gravity before disappearing into the thick stormy clouds in a series of titanic explosions. This structure of total and violent destruction provided a rare and staggering view into the power of the largest world in our local system. The fragments of the comet struck the atmosphere with the force of millions of nuclear weapons, creating dark, Earth-sized scars that lingered in Jupiter's clouds for months. It was a final, spectacular act for a visitor that had travelled billions of miles, only to be consumed by the very whirl that had likely guided its path for eons. The sudden end is a sharp contrast to the slow, elegant decay of the extinct husks, showing that the universe has many ways to conclude a story. The impact was a moment of profound transformation, where the ice and dust of the outer system were instantly integrated into the massive chemistry of a gas giant. Even in the moment of their total destruction, these visitors perform a final life-giving act by seeding the deep atmospheres of the gas giants with complex compounds and lasting water ripples. The impact of a comet delivers a massive pulse of oxygen, water, and organic molecules to worlds that would otherwise be dominated by hydrogen and helium. These materials become a permanent part of the planet's chemical legacy, altering the composition of the clouds and the behaviour of the storms for generations to come. This structure of celestial contribution means that the massive worlds of our system are partially built from the remains of the countless comets that have fallen into them over billions of years. The water vapour detected in the upper atmospheres of Saturn and Jupiter is a lingering chemical echo of these ancient icy travellers. The comet's end is not a loss of matter, but a spectacular redistribution of its ancient primordial secrets into the fabric of a much larger world. This redistribution ensures that the legacy of the comet continues to ripple through the atmospheric patterns and chemical cycles of the giant planet. It is a profound, albeit violent, bridge between the outer cold and the inner stormy hearts of the gas giants. As you find rest in the quiet of this moment, reflect on the beauty of a life that is defined by its willingness to change and give back to the world. The life cycle of a comet is a slow, elegant decay into the background tapestry of the universe, a process where nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed. It is a story of gradual surrender, where the ancient frozen structure is slowly traded for the light, the heat, and the chemistry of the inner solar system. This structure of decay is not a tragedy, but a magnificent and orderly process that ensures the materials of the past are always being returned to the present. The comet does not cling to its form, but allows itself to be shaped and eventually dissolved by the forces of the stars and the planets. It moves with a quiet grace through the different stages of its existence, accepting the fire and the frost with an equal and unyielding patience. The final dissolution of the comet's body is a moment of profound cosmic recycling, where the building blocks of matter are released to join the next cycle of creation. Every atom that once formed a jagged, icy spire is now free to explore the infinite possibilities of the void. This three-part transformation of these objects is one of the most complete and beautiful narrative arcs in the entire history of the solar system. They transform from unseen deep space ice to brilliant heralds of the inner system, and finally to silent, stony ghosts that haunt the dark between the worlds. Each stage of this journey offers a different way of experiencing the universe, moving from the absolute cold of the nursery to the intense fire of the sun, and finally to the heavy stillness of extinction. The unseen ice holds the potential for beauty. The brilliant herald realizes that potential in a burst of light, and the stony ghost preserves the memory of that beauty in a state of permanent rest. We are witnesses to a cycle that is as old as the sun itself, a grand and silent wandering that never truly ends. By watching these transformations, we learn to appreciate the different seasons of a celestial life, seeing the value in both the brilliant flash and the silent, dark husk. The comet is a reminder that everything in the universe is in a state of constant rhythmic movement, shifting between the visible and the invisible. Rest in the knowledge that you are a part of this same grand, unfolding story of change and light. The ultimate fate of every comet, whether it ends in a sudden, violent impact or a slow, quiet extinction, is to eventually become the very space dust from which it originally formed. Over billions of years, even the stony husks and the scattered fragments will be ground down by collisions and the erosive power of the solar wind until they are reduced to microscopic grains. These particles will return to the interstellar medium, drifting once again in the dark between the stars as they wait for the next cycle of creation to begin. Deep within this return to the void is the secret of the universe's eternal youth, a constant process of breaking down and rebuilding that keeps the cosmos in a state of perpetual potential. The matter that once built a mountain of ice and powered a sky-spanning tail will eventually find its way into the birth of new stars and new planetary systems. It is a total and selfless recycling of the past, a guarantee that the ingredients of history are always being prepared for the next great dawn. Your breath is part of a larger world, and that world is part of a grander cosmos that continues its slow, majestic dance toward an inevitable and beautiful return to the dust. Comets are not merely travelling rocks, but ephemeral rivers of ancient memory, evaporating their history into the light so that the universe might know its own origins. Deep within this final realization, we see that comets are not merely travelling rocks, but ephemeral rivers of ancient memory. They move through the void as messengers of the dawn, evaporating their history into the light so that the universe might know its own origins. This grand synthesis brings our journey to a close, leaving us in a state of profound cosmic peace. This quiet room now holds the same stillness that once characterized the furthest reaches of the silent dark. Notice your toes as they rest heavily, completely released from the need to move or hold any weight. Your feet and ankles sink deeper into the soft support below, feeling a gentle warmth spreading upward through your calves and knees. Surprisingly, the body finds its own perfect center as your thighs and hips become heavy and still. The tension of the day has evaporated like the ancient ice of a passing wanderer, leaving only a sense of grounded comfort. Every muscle in your lower body has surrendered to the gravity of this peaceful moment. If we were to look closer at the rhythm of your breath, we would see the slow, steady expansion of your chest and stomach. Your lower back and spine are perfectly aligned with the softness of the mattress, feeling supported and completely safe. Your fingers, palms and wrists lie open and relaxed, having finished their work and finding their own silent rest. The weight of your shoulders drops away now, melting into the cool, smooth fabric of the sheets. Every small muscle in your neck releases its hold, allowing your head to be cradled by the soft, forgiving pillow. Your jaw is loose, and the tiny lines around your eyes soften as you drift toward a state of total, unmoving peace. The air in the room is cool and still, flowing gently in and out of your lungs without any conscious effort. You feel the texture of the blanket against your skin, a comforting and familiar boundary that keeps you safe and warm. The silence of the house is like a heavy velvet curtain that has been drawn shut to protect your rest. The rhythm of your heart is a slow, quiet pulse that guides you deeper into the welcoming softness of the mattress. Every breath is a gentle wave that carries you further away from the waking world and into the calm of deep rest. You're sinking into the layers of comfort, wrapped in the safety of this quiet, dark space. The room is a sanctuary where time has slowed to a crawl, allowing you to simply exist in the stillness. You're heavy, you're warm, and you are ready for the long, quiet night ahead. Peace is the only thing that remains in the center of your awareness, and now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.